The sun hung low over the quiet suburban neighborhood, casting golden rays across neatly trimmed lawns and flower-lined driveways. 8-year-old Emily knelt by the curb, her laughter ringing out as she chased a butterfly with a net. Her pigtails bounced with every step, and her pink sneakers kicked up tiny clouds of dust. Across the street, 16-year-old Alex sat cross-legged on his porch, a sketchpad balanced on his knees. His pencil moved swiftly, capturing the numbers and letters of passing cars' license plates in meticulous detail, a habit that often drew curious glances from neighbors but never judgment. To most, Alex was just that quirky kid, harmless and distant, lost in his own world. Suddenly, the hum of an engine broke the afternoon calm. A white van rolled to a stop near Emily, its windows tinted and its sides unmarked except for a faded sticker of a cartoon dog. The side door slid open, and a man leaned out, holding a squirming puppy. "Hey there, little one," he called, his voice warm but edged with urgency. "I've got some puppies here looking for good homes. Want to take a closer look?" Emily hesitated for only a moment before stepping closer, her eyes wide with excitement. Before anyone could notice, the man grabbed her arm, pulling her into the van. The door slammed shut, and the vehicle roared away, leaving behind nothing but the faint smell of burnt rubber. From his perch on the porch, Alex froze mid-sketch. Something about the van had caught his attention. The rhythm of its engine, the way it slowed so deliberately, and most importantly, its license plate. It wasn't fully visible, but Alex's sharp mind had already pieced together fragments, B347 followed by what looked like an R or maybe a P. He stared at the empty road where the van had disappeared, his heart pounding. For a moment, he thought about calling out to someone, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he clutched his sketchpad tighter, his mind racing. This wasn't just another ordinary day. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous, and deep down, Alex knew he couldn't ignore it. Alex's world was one of patterns, numbers, and quiet routines. At school, he often sat alone during lunch, tracing the grooves of the cafeteria table with his fingertips while other students laughed and chattered around him. His classmates didn't mean to exclude him, they simply didn't know how to connect with someone who found comfort in repetition and order. Sometimes, they'd tease him gently, calling him the license plate kid because of his habit of jotting down plates from passing cars. But Alex didn't mind. Their jokes rolled off him like water on glass. What hurt more were the moments when teachers or neighbors whispered about him being different, as if different meant less. Still, Alex had two things that kept him grounded: his love for solving puzzles and his parents, who always reminded him that his way of seeing the world wasn't a flaw, it was a gift. At home, Alex's room was a sanctuary of organization. Shelves lined with notebooks overflowed with sketches of license plates, maps marked with routes he'd memorized, and scraps of paper filled with cryptic notes only he could decipher. He dreamed of becoming a detective someday, not because it seemed glamorous, but because it felt like the perfect job for someone like him, someone who noticed what others overlooked. Yet even with his sharp mind, Alex struggled to imagine a future where people truly understood him. His mom often told him, "The world isn't ready for someone like you yet, sweetheart, but maybe you'll help it get there." Those words stuck with him, though they also weighed heavily. Deep down, Alex longed to prove that his quirks weren't just harmless oddities, they mattered. When Emily went missing, something inside Alex shifted. As he replayed the image of the van in his mind, the partial plate, the strange sticker, the sound of its engine, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was his chance to make a difference. It wasn't just about finding her, it was about proving to himself, and to everyone else, that his unique perspective had value. The thought terrified him almost as much as it excited him. What if no one listened? What if he failed? But then he remembered Emily's bright smile, the way she waved at him whenever she passed his house, and the realization hit him hard. He couldn't stay silent. This wasn't just about solving a mystery anymore. It was about showing the world that even someone like him could be a hero. Alex approached the small crowd gathered outside Emily's house, his sketchpad clutched tightly to his chest. Officers milled about, asking neighbors if they'd seen anything unusual. Taking a deep breath, Alex tugged on the sleeve of one officer. "The van," he said, his voice steady but soft. "I saw it. The license plate starts with B347, and there's an R, or maybe AP at the end." The officer gave him a polite nod, but Alex could see the doubt flicker across his face. "Thanks for letting us know, kid," the man said before turning away, already distracted by another lead. Alex stood frozen, watching as his words were brushed aside like crumbs from a table. At home, Alex tried again, this time with his parents. "Mom, Dad, I'm sure about the plate," he insisted, flipping through his notebook to show them his sketches. His mom frowned, her brow furrowed with concern. "Alex, sweetheart, are you absolutely certain? You know how important this is." Her tone wasn't unkind, but it stung all the same. Even his dad, usually so supportive, hesitated. "Maybe you should leave this to the police, buddy. They're trained for situations like this." Their doubt gnawed at him, planting seeds of uncertainty in his mind. Was he wrong? Could he have imagined those numbers? But then he thought of Emily, her laughter, her kindness, and pushed the doubts aside. If no one else would listen, he had to trust himself. Hours turned into a day, and still, there was no sign of Emily. News reports showed officers searching parks and questioning strangers, their efforts scattered and unfocused. Meanwhile, Alex sat alone in his room, staring at the fragments of the license plate scribbled in his notebook. He felt torn between frustration and fear. Should he keep pushing, risking embarrassment or worse if he was wrong? Or should he step back and let the authorities handle it, even though every instinct told him they were looking in the wrong places? The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. Somewhere out there, Emily was scared and alone, counting on someone to find her. And Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was her only chance. That night, Alex lay awake, staring at the ceiling as tears welled up in his eyes. He hated this feeling, the ache of being underestimated, of having something vital to say but no one willing to hear it. Yet beneath the sadness burned a quiet determination. He thought about all the times people had dismissed him, called him odd or unreliable. This time, he told himself, would be different. This time, he wouldn't let them down, and he wouldn't let Emily down either. With trembling hands, he reached for his phone, scrolling until he found the number for the local police station. He didn't care if they doubted him. He had to try again. For Emily, and for himself, he had to believe that his voice mattered. The neighborhood had always seemed like a postcard-perfect slice of suburban life. Rows of houses with freshly painted shutters lined the streets, their lawns manicured to perfection. Children rode bikes down sidewalks, shaded by towering oak trees, and the hum of distant lawnmowers blended with birdsong during the day. Neighbors exchanged warm smiles over white picket fences, convinced they lived in a place where nothing bad could ever happen. But now, as dusk settled over the community, that illusion began to crack. Shadows stretched long across empty driveways, and the chirping crickets were drowned out by the occasional wail of police sirens. The once familiar streets felt foreign, cloaked in an eerie stillness that made every rustle of leaves sound like footsteps. Inside Alex's room, the air was thick with focus and tension. Maps of the neighborhood covered his walls, dotted with red ink circles marking potential routes the van might have taken. Sketches of license plates filled page after page of his notebook, each one labeled with timestamps and observations. A single desk lamp illuminated the chaos, casting sharp shadows on piles of paper stacked precariously around him. To anyone else, it would look like clutter, but to Alex, it was order, a way to impose logic on the swirling uncertainty outside. This tiny space, usually a refuge, had transformed into a command center for his investigation. Every detail mattered, every pattern held meaning, and Alex clung to this sense of control as the world beyond his window unraveled. As night deepened, the contrast between the idyllic daytime setting and the present mood became almost unbearable. Gone were the cheerful shouts of kids playing tag, or the scent of backyard barbecues wafting through the air. Instead, the cool breeze carried whispers of fear, hushed conversations between neighbors speculating about Emily's disappearance, the glow of porch lights left on all night as if to ward off darkness, both literal and metaphorical. Even the stars above seemed dimmer, obscured by clouds that rolled in silently. For Alex, the shift mirrored his own journey, from the calm routine of sketching license plates to the suffocating weight of responsibility. The quiet suburb he loved had turned into a labyrinth of unanswered questions, and he was determined to find his way through it, for Emily's sake and for his own. Alex sat on the edge of his bed, clutching his phone as he listened to snippets of conversation drifting through the open window. Officers were gathered outside Emily's house, their voices tinged with frustration. "We've hit another dead end," one muttered. "No credible leads so far." Each word felt like a punch to Alex's chest. He glanced at his notebook, filled with painstakingly recorded details about the van, the partial license plate, the strange sticker, the sound of its engine, and knew he couldn't stay silent any longer. Taking a deep breath, he dialed 911, his hands trembling but resolute. When the dispatcher answered, Alex spoke slowly and clearly, determined not to let his nerves get in the way. "I saw the van that took Emily," he began, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "It had a license plate starting with B347, and I think there's an R, or maybe AP at the end. There was also a faded cartoon dog sticker on the side." The dispatcher paused before responding, her tone cautious yet curious. She transferred him to Officer Ramirez, who had been leading the investigation. To Alex's surprise, Officer Ramirez didn't dismiss him outright. Instead, he asked thoughtful follow-up questions, encouraging Alex to share everything he remembered. "You're doing great, Alex," Ramirez said warmly. "This could really help us." That small act of belief lit a spark within Alex, giving him the confidence to push forward. Over the next hour, officers worked tirelessly, cross-referencing Alex's information with vehicle registration databases. Slowly but surely, they narrowed down the list of possible vans. Meanwhile, Alex stayed glued to his phone, waiting anxiously for updates. When Officer Ramirez finally called back, his voice was urgent but hopeful. "We found a match, a white van registered to someone with a history of criminal activity. We're heading to his last known address now." Alex's heart raced as he imagined Emily locked away somewhere, scared and alone. But for the first time since the kidnapping, he allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. The climactic moment came just before dawn. Police surrounded a dilapidated house on the outskirts of town, its windows dark and its yard overgrown with weeds. Inside, they discovered Emily huddled in the basement, frightened but unharmed. As officers led her out into the cool morning air, she blinked against the light, her face pale but relieved. News of her rescue spread quickly, and soon the entire neighborhood erupted in cheers. For Alex, hearing Officer Ramirez's voice crackle over the phone, "We got her, Alex. You did it," was enough to bring tears streaming down his face. In that moment, all the doubt, fear, and isolation melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of purpose and connection. Emily was safe, and Alex had played a vital role in bringing her home. The sun rose over the neighborhood, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink as Emily was reunited with her family. Her mother clung to her tightly, tears streaming down her face, while her father knelt beside them, whispering words of gratitude. Neighbors gathered around, cheering and applauding, not just for Emily's safe return, but for the boy who had made it possible. Alex stood at the edge of the crowd, his hands shoved into his pockets, feeling both out of place and deeply connected. When Officer Ramirez called him forward, the applause grew louder, and Alex's cheeks flushed red. "This is Alex," Ramirez announced, his voice filled with pride. His incredible memory and quick thinking led us straight to Emily. News outlets quickly picked up the story, dubbing Alex a hero. Reporters marveled at how his unique ability to notice details others overlooked had cracked the case wide open. Headlines celebrated not only his actions, but also his neurodivergence, framing it not as a limitation but as a superpower. One article read, "Teen with autism solves kidnapping case, a story of unseen strengths." For the first time in his life, Alex felt truly seen, not as the quirky kid or that license plate guy, but as someone whose differences were valuable, even extraordinary. The weight of years of doubt and misunderstanding began to lift, replaced by a quiet confidence that settled deep within him. The impact rippled through the community. Local schools invited Alex to speak about his experience, and his story inspired new initiatives aimed at celebrating diverse talents. Teachers started programs focused on inclusion, encouraging students to embrace their individuality and recognize the strengths in others. Parents whispered to their children, "Be like Alex, kind, observant, and brave." Even kids who once teased him now approached him with admiration asking questions about his sketches and methods. Alex didn't feel alone anymore. Instead, he felt like a vital part of something bigger, a community learning to see the world through each other's eyes. As the days turned into weeks, Alex returned to his routines, but everything felt different now. He still sketched license plates and mapped routes, but there was a newfound purpose behind his work. He no longer doubted whether his quirks mattered. They did, and he knew it. Sitting on his porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery colors, Alex smiled softly to himself. Somewhere in the distance, he heard laughter, Emily's laughter, and it reminded him why he'd pushed so hard to be heard. This wasn't just a happy ending for Emily or for the neighborhood. It was a beginning for Alex, a chapter where he finally felt valued for exactly who he was. And that, more than anything, gave him hope for the future. As the investigation unfolded, detectives uncovered a chilling motive behind Emily's kidnapping. The suspect, a disgruntled former employee of a nearby tech company, had been targeting families connected to the business. Emily's father, a key witness in a recent lawsuit against the man, had unknowingly placed his family in danger by testifying in court. What made this revelation even more startling was how Alex pieced it together. Not from evidence presented during the case, but from fragments of conversations he'd overheard weeks earlier. While waiting for the school bus one morning, Alex had caught snippets of angry dialogue between two men near the park. At the time, their words seemed random. "They'll pay for what they did," one voice growled. But now, those fragmented sentences clicked into place like pieces of a puzzle. Alex approached Officer Ramirez with his theory, explaining how the kidnappers' actions weren't random, they were calculated revenge. His insight stunned everyone, reinforcing just how remarkable his mind truly was. The final twist deepened the mystery and showcased Alex's brilliance in ways no one expected. Where others saw chaos, Alex found patterns. Where others dismissed small details, he saw connections. This ability wasn't just a quirk, it was a gift that saved Emily's life. As news of his deductions spread, admiration for Alex grew even stronger. Neighbors who once underestimated him now looked at him with awe, realizing they'd misjudged the depth of his contributions. Even Emily's father sought him out, gripping his hand tightly as he said, "You didn't just save my daughter, you gave us back our lives." In the days that followed, the community came together to celebrate. Balloons dotted front yards, banners hung across streets, and laughter echoed through the neighborhood once again. Amidst the festivities, Alex returned to his porch, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm of sketching license plates. But this time, there was a difference. He sat taller, his pencil moving with purpose. Each stroke felt like a quiet reminder of what he'd accomplished, a testament to his unique perspective and unwavering determination. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm light over the quiet suburb, Alex allowed himself a small smile. He knew the world still had much to learn about people like him, but maybe, just maybe, stories like his could help pave the way. And with that thought, he turned the page in his notebook, ready to face whatever came next.